All right, it is September 29th, 2023. And so it's a Friday. Here we are at the end of September. Days getting shorter in the Northern Hemisphere. I trust that they're getting longer in the Southern Hemisphere, but I haven't been there, so I wouldn't know. And we're going to meditate for 20 minutes and then find something Dharma and recovery related to talk about. So let's start sitting. I'll give some meditation guidance for a little while, and then I'll let people sit quietly. Just settling into your meditation posture. Try to find a balanced and comfortable posture, sitting in a way that you can be alert and still relaxed. That's the balance we're trying to achieve. You can close your eyes or just lower your gaze. And just turning the attention inward. We're with mindfulness, we're paying attention to different aspects of our experience. First, starting with the physical sense experience, how the body feels, any prominent sensations, and trying to relax the body a bit. And as we sit, we kind of progress through awareness of feelings and thoughts, mental states. But starting with the breath, just being aware of the body breathing, the movement and sensations. Now we point to particular sensations that can be helpful as objects or concentration objects. So paying attention to the air touching the nostrils, coming in and out, is one way to pay attention to the breath. Or we can pay attention to the movement of the chest and belly. Or we can follow the whole of the breath. Whatever really helps you to stay in the present moment. And this is our initial effort to just connect with the breath and the body. And even that can be challenging with the tendency of the mind to wander. It takes a gentle guidance to bring the attention back to the breath. And it can be valuable to check in with the felt experience, the mood and energy in the body, how you're feeling, breathing with that. Well, the breath gives us this a neutral experience, not particularly pleasant or unpleasant to rest with. Then very often the feelings and thoughts can be things that are either unpleasant and difficult to be with, or that they, particularly with thoughts, capture us in some kind of hope or plan or dream, something that fascinates the mind. So this can become difficult to let go. We're not trying to push away thoughts or demonize them. At the same time, we're trying not to just lose touch with the present moment and with the breath. And this is a delicate balance, really, to not struggle or become forceful in our efforts, and at the same time, not to just become passive, drift off. Our effort really should have a quality of kindness or gentleness in it. Okay. Welcome again. Hmm. Um, Thought I would read a little bit from Ajahn Amaro's book called Finding the Missing Piece. I don't know if I was reading from this the other day or not. Peace spelled P-E-A-C-E. It's well, I pronounce the word P-I-P-R-I-M-E-R, a primer, but I know others pronounce it primer. So in any case, the subtitle is A Primer of Buddhist Meditation. Um, and this is lesson 2 called Movement and Stillness. In Buddhist meditation practice, we are developing natural qualities that already exist within us as potentials. We are not trying to acquire anything special from outside or trying to change ourselves into someone else in a forced or unnatural way. Like all living beings, human beings require both stability or steadiness and flexibility or adaptability. It's necessary to have both of these qualities. If a tree or a plant were absolutely rigid, as soon as a breeze came along or something knocked against it, it would break. Conversely, if a plant has no strength in it, if it's completely flexible, it will just droop and not remain upright at all. The basic theme for this lesson, movement and stillness, is about looking at these different elements of our being and seeing how they work together, looking at both that which is stable and steady and that which is flexible and adaptable. Before I go on, I just want to refer back to this line that we're not trying to change ourselves into someone else. I think that's a really helpful thing to remember, because I think there is very often, especially in the spiritual world, people have some image of themselves as being something different, and they imagine that there's this magical way of transforming through spiritual, who knows how that works. I mean, I don't know, those mystical, magical, powerful, enlightened people know. And so if they teach me the magical mantra, a special thing, then I'll be a different person, and that's really painful. It's because obviously it's founded in the idea that we are not okay as we are. And it's also problematic because it's not possible to become someone different. So it's just a no-win situation. And so I think it's a good thing to notice about yourself and then reflect on what it would mean to change without being someone different and what that would mean. And one of the ways I like to think about it is in terms of looking at the qualities that you have and seeing thinking about what the most positive way for them to manifest would be. So my example for this is from my own experience of when I started to meditate and realized how much time I spent like kind of imagining things. And I thought, oh, that's makes me a bad meditator, and that's I shouldn't do that. And then some years later, realizing that my capacity to imagine things is what made me a musician and a writer. And but that if I spent my time imagining things just in order to escape from reality, then yeah, it was unproductive. But when I actually harnessed that capacity or that tendency in positive ways, that it was a very useful thing. So that's I think there are many other, the other obvious one that I encounter a great deal is the desire to be of service, and how that can manifest as a kind of codependence, and the someone who feels that they've got to, in order to get love or to be a good enough person, they have to give themselves away, versus someone who really just wants to be of service without giving themselves away, and still taking care of themselves. Of course, this is what the whole Al-Anon program is about, as far as I understand it. But again, it's not these qualities aren't innately good or bad. It's how we manifest them. So don't try to be someone else. Just be your best self. I'll read a little bit more. This paragraph is called Silence, Stillness, Silence, Space. A common misconception about meditation is that one is aiming for absolute stillness, silence, space. With that idea, one can feel burdened by agitation, noise, and constriction. No stillness, no silence, no space. And this can lead one to long for these qualities that are missing. This is a misunderstanding of the goal of meditation. The whole thrust of Buddhism on the West Coast in the late 50s and 60s was to make emptiness the big thing. And this became a theme for the counterculture. By worshiping that kind of stillness, silence, or emptiness, but mistaking absence and stasis for it, one can miss out on a large part of life, particularly the life of the thinking mind. Okay. Might have to, get back to Ajahn Amaro on this, but so yeah, I think we get the drift. So this little next section, and this maybe be the last thing I read, that it's called The Chattering Mind. Actually, since I'm commentating, and this reminds me that for the day long tomorrow that we're doing at the Berkeley Buddhist Monastery, I got an email from one of the monks, who's the one that I've been mostly corresponding with about it, Jin Chuan. And he said, "Oh, there's going to be a Chinese orchestra." I think that's what he said. I think that might be what he called it. Practicing from 1 to 3. Let me see if I can find it. What he calls it. He says, we have a Chinese ensemble that comes on Sundays from 1 to 3 p.m. They can practice in the dining hall, but there will be some music there. And later on, he mentions that he says it's a Chinese orchestra, so they play various Chinese instruments, and then he puts in a little smile emoji after that, or a winking, I guess it is, the semicolon. Anyway, I was like, and my thought was, oh, good, we'll be practicing with sound. Because this idea that somehow silence is needed to meditate, because to me it's like, oh, I can't hear my noisy mind if you're so loud out there. My first teacher was a monk named Akasa. He told a story about being he was a monk in Sri Lanka, and he was in this house. He had gone to this house, and he was looking for these people, and walking around, and he opens a door, and there's people meditating, and someone looks up, and they're like, "Would you be quiet? Can't you see we're meditating?" And he was like, getting angry about someone like opening a door doesn't sound like your meditation is really working that well, right? And then there's, of course, the story I often tell that I've heard from Ajahn Amaro about Ajahn Chah's first visit to London, where there was a punk rock band playing next door. And after the meditation, he asked people, "Did the music bother you?" And people, "Yeah, that was really annoying." He said, "No, the music was not annoying. You were annoying the music. You know, the music was just being music, but you're making it into a problem." So that's a great challenge, because my experience is that all works up to a point, and then there's a point at which, and of course, for everybody has their tolerance level. Maybe if you're really enlightened, your point is you can take roaring, jet planes flying over, but I find like a certain amount of noise is I can work with, but then at a certain point, and certain types of noise, that's the other thing that's interesting, right? Because if it's a certain type of noise, or you think that there's like somebody is making that noise, or don't they know I'm meditating, or the neighbor lets the dog out, and don't they know I have a meditation class, so always interesting just to see our reactive patterns. Okay, so this one more section called the chattering mind. The thinking mind will come up in most, if not all, of these meditation lessons. This is the chattering mind, the collection of commentators in the mind giving their opinions about everything. And it's not as though there is just one commentary going. There's a whole committee, and not all the members agree with each other. Working with the chattering mind, which endlessly reviews the past and plans for the future and has opinions about everything else, can feel very burdensome. One wants the chattering mind to shut up, and it is easy to feel bliss when it does stop. However, if not thinking was equivalent to enlightenment, the Buddha would have prescribed an ancient form of Thorazine to wipe out the thinking process, and we'd all be happy. It doesn't work that way. True happiness is not just a matter of thinking. Ajahn Chah often said, water buffaloes, which are common in Thailand, are the epitome of the extremely quiet mind. Water buffaloes have an aura of incredible density. They can hang around in rice paddies and chew their cud for hours on end. Similarly, a chicken can sit on its nest for days. So by just sitting in meditation and not thinking for days and days, one might develop as much wisdom as a chicken, which is probably not a great deal. So it's good to acknowledge a sense of relief that one can get from the stillness, the silence, and the peace, but it's a mistake to overestimate their importance. And this is obviously, a persistent question, dealing with thought. And as Ajahn Amaro suggests, it's often the the first thing that people ask about or complain about or judge themselves about. And certainly I've often heard people say, "Oh, I'm no good at meditating. I think too much." And as I said in one of my books, when someone says that to me, I feel like what they're saying is, "Oh, you're a good meditator because you don't think very much." And I consider that to be an insult because I do think a lot. So it really does point to this misapprehension. And actually, and before I go on, though, I do want to point to a couple of things that I don't think get mentioned enough when we talk about the chattering mind. And I'm going to come back to working with it or how we approach it. But he says the chattering mind, which endlessly reviews the past and plans for the future and has opinions about everything else. And those are certainly three of the things that we do, thinking about the future, the past, and having opinions. A couple things that I notice that I suspect are very common as well. One is calculating, trying to figure things out. And sometimes that's just with numbers. But it's also like, oh, what day did I do that? And how many days ago was that? And these kinds of sort of like calculating. I think that's one thing that I think our minds do a lot. And the other one, which is closely related to that, is more sort of a generalization of that, is wanting to know something, trying to figure something out. I spend a lot of time in my meditation trying to figure something out. And again, I'm just pointing it out because I think it's helpful to see the types of thoughts and see and then make the connection with what the Buddha is talking about, because trying to figure something out is the desire to know, right? And tanha, desire, is what the Buddha says is the cause of suffering. Now, typically he's referring specifically to sensual desire, but we can see clearly that mental desire, that the desire to know something, is also a really powerful tendency that we have. And I think I find it helpful, particularly on that topic, to see how much delusion arises in human culture and human society through people being uncomfortable with not knowing something. So the reason we try to figure things out is because we don't feel comfortable when we don't know things. And so that's okay. And we know like that leads to a lot of solutions, as Cindy just put in, problem solving. So yeah, we solve problems, but it also means that at a certain point, we just start to make shit up. And so you wind up through history when people didn't understand things, like what made it rain, they would create a rain god and pray to a rain god. And it's like, well, you know, that's now, at least, in our scientific society, we don't believe that that works. Now, maybe that does work, but, there was a time when it was thought that, if you were sick, that you should get blood out of the body, right? So people would slice people over and bleed them, or they would put leeches on them, and that's because we didn't know why we got sick. So we just made something up. And then we turned it into, that was our science, right? In my first creative writing class, there was a woman who was writing a book that got published that's about the discovery of the cause of cholera. So I think around the 1860s in London. Anyway, it's in mid 19th century. And people believed at that time that the cause of cholera, and you see this in old novels, was the bad air, right? And we know, like, bad air is not good, but it's not good for your lungs. It doesn't cause cholera. And but there was all this stuff that people did around, oh, well, don't, avoid the bad air, right? They thought that swamps were causing diseases, which, if you go into a swamp, or you have the mosquitoes from the swamp, yeah. But anyway, so eventually somebody actually traced where the area where the most people had cholera, and he found that it was around this particular well in London. And he realized that the cholera was coming from the water, right? Which is what we now know is where cholera comes from, and when the sewage gets into the water. Not to get too, but so again, we'll just if we don't know something, we just make something up. And, conspiracy theories, right? Wow, it's this. It's like, just make it up. So it's not like a harmless thing. So just watch your mind, watch what your mind makes up. I mean, that's what judging is, right? I mean, it's something, I'm very aware in myself, and catching that like tendency to think you know something. All right. So let me go back to this question of just working with that aspect of the mind, the chattering mind, as Ajahn Amaro calls it. And this is, I think, the first great art of learning that we need to learn in order to become meditators, people who feel that they have some competence in meditation. And that is to be able to not be disturbed by your thinking. This is, and it takes practice, and I was teaching over at Cal Berkeley the other day. They have a mindfulness club that I've been visiting occasionally over the last 7 years. I'll go and visit them once or twice each semester. And so I'm, with them, they're mostly beginning meditators. So I get to kind of go back over kind of beginning ideas. And it's really lovely. It's very fun to be able to hang out with these college kids and see their curiosity and their engagement and their energy. But one of the things that kind of came up as I was talking to them, and something I've been thinking about, is if that ability to not be disturbed by thoughts actually requires more practice, and particularly if you kind of need to go on a retreat or two and get into a concentrated state. What the way that the neuropsychologists like Rick Hanson talk about what happens as we increase our experience with meditation is they talk about establishing neural pathways in the mind that help you to settle and help you to concentrate and help you to be more present. And whether that's literally true or not, I don't know, but it certainly is a good description of the experience of being an experienced meditator and sitting down and seeing that what I find is much of the time I don't get concentrated necessarily in a relatively in my daily meditation, but I'm able to take my attention into a place where it's not disturbed by the lack of concentration. And I'm often trying to point people to that kind of a place, to be able to sit. And it's not that you're concentrating on the breath, but there's some awareness of the breath generally might be coming in and out. But the stream of thoughts isn't absorbing you. It takes you away, but it doesn't absorb you so that you don't get lost in it for long periods. And this doesn't describe every period of meditation I have, because there are times when I get completely lost, and usually that's somewhat willful. But much of the time there is this kind of state which doesn't feel like I know I'm not in a concentration state, because I've been in those states on retreats, but I know it's also different from how meditation affected me when I first started. And that's what makes me think maybe it's not something I can transmit with words, that maybe it's not something I can teach people. And it's something that's like, kind of been on my mind lately in general, is whether it actually makes sense to expect, I guess I'll say, people to get to a state like that if they haven't had enough meditation training. And so I don't know, because I know I'm just really thinking out loud here, so I hope it's not confusing or irritating, but because I know some of you are experienced meditators and know what have had this experience that I'm talking about being able to just let the thoughts come and let them go, as Suzuki Roshi says, that you're sitting and you're actually settled, but you're not concentrated, but you're not disturbed by the mind. And so it's sort of, it's a question maybe I can ask you guys as a group what your sense of that is. Whether when I talk about something like that, oh, okay, you hear it and you're able to go there, or whether it seems inaccessible. And I think that, what, as a teacher, what I am kind of trying to do, and it's kind of what parents try to do too, is like help you avoid the unnecessary pitfalls that I went through and help you to get to a more easeful, comfortable meditation, and by essentially taking this attitude of not being disturbed by thoughts. So I think I'll just leave it there and see if there are questions or comments about that, whether you feel that that's enough instruction for you guys, or whether it's really a mistake on my part to think that I can just communicate that with words. So thank you for raising your hand, Steve. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I think it's extremely beneficial, what you're talking about this evening. I've tried meditating off and on most of my life, but I started making a decision to meditate regularly about a year before COVID hit. And I will say over the past year, or probably 2 years, once I started going on more retreats, is that everything you just talked about is really happening for me. I mean, I'm fortunate enough that I have a very quiet meditation studio that I can come out at 4:35 in the morning, and it's just silent. But yet, there's oftentimes a noise will occur. I'm even at the point now where I can sit and meditate in the afternoon when the landscapers come around with the gas blowers, and that's kind of where I start to get to my enough is enough. But
Right.
I don't let it disturb me. And there's days I have these beautiful meditations, and there's days where I get disturbed or I get upset because my mind goes to some place that I don't want it to be. I just don't want to be there. I don't want to be thinking about that. But yet at the same time, as soon as I go back to my breath, within seconds, I'm not disturbed anymore. So at
Yeah.
least I see what you're talking about is absolutely true for me.
Yeah.
It's been very beneficial, and I like the way you frame that. Just thinking about it, you're thinking about your own experiences, and you're sharing those experiences with us. And so I don't know, I'm just really enjoying my meditation. And the question I would have is, I'm meditating for an hour every morning. I've been doing that now for about almost 2 years, and whenever it's over, it feels like 10 minutes. I just don't want it to stop. I want to
Mhm.
just keep meditating. So I'm thinking about maybe upping the time that I sit. But what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that a person can overdo it? I mean, I don't know.
The main thing I would be careful of is that you're staying alert, that you're not kind of drifting into just a sort of limbo state of, where you're not really meditating, you're just kind of drifting and it feels pleasant. But if you can sustain it, I just find that it is hard to sustain mindfulness, or like a focused mindfulness, for much more than an hour at a time.
Come to think of it, I did do a couple of days where I did an hour and a half, and I'm thinking back on it now, you're right. It's not that I'm falling asleep or whatever, but the key word is being mindful.
Yeah.
When I start to get distracted, I can tell myself, be mindful, go back to the breath. And then when I went longer, it seemed like that's what was kind of happening to me. So I think an hour is plenty.
What I find really helpful, Steve, actually, if I want my meditation to be deeper, is to do a second period of meditation, not right away, but like if I meditate before breakfast and then I meditate after breakfast, that second meditation will tend to be really nice, because it's like I'll slide right into it, so.
Yeah, I've done some afternoon meditations and I get the
Mhm.
same experience. So,
Yeah.
well, thank you for that.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I mean, the general question too that I'm sort of reflecting on is um, what do we think? Well, when we're teaching meditation, what we are teaching, because I think there's a great tendency. I've said this before, that you teach what works for you, and that makes sense. There's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes maybe it doesn't work for the person who's there to learn to meditate, and then they feel like, oh, they either they're not getting it, or there's something wrong, and not realizing that, oh, this just isn't a good fit. So I do think it's important to try different practices and try different teachers. Other comments, questions? Mike, hi.
Hey, Kevin. Yeah, the what you were saying about trying different teachers seems seems like really good advice, because I've tried, quite a few different teachers, and some of them just I didn't connect with. It didn't resonate what they were saying, and some it did. And so I think that's really good practice. And then what Amaro is saying here about steadiness and flexibility.
Mhm.
So I've been meditating now, getting close to 5 years, and that's something that seems to develop over time, or for me has developed over time, where the chattiness of the mind, I've learned to get a little steadier and a little more flexible with it, where I can look, pay attention to it sometimes, or sometimes I can let it go. And I've gotten a little better at that. And I think, you know, the instruction does help from someone that you can relate to, and that you maybe think similar to.
Mhm.
But the experience is probably the most important thing, just doing
Yeah.
it. So that's kind of been my experience with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that really gets to the kind of what I'm talking about. That I think there are some really helpful ideas that you can get from a meditation teacher, but they can't teach you to meditate. You can only teach yourself to meditate, and you have to go in there and be with your own mind for a while, and um, see what it's like, because much of the instruction, I mean, certain instruction tracks, but then there's a lot of instruction that uh, that language doesn't capture the experience. and we have to learn to navigate it ourselves. It's like, riding a bike. It's like just you have to get the feeling. Nobody can really tell you how to ride a bike. What they usually do is say, let's go to get you going. And then you think that they're still holding on, and then you realize they're not holding on anymore, and you've got the momentum, and you find the way to feel that balance. So it's very much a felt experience, and it, like riding a bike, it also is there's something about balance, which is what Amaro is talking about there. But yeah, that's why I sometimes think like, I'm here, blah, 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 talking about meditation, blah, blah, blah. But maybe,
Actually,
just,
that's probably the most helpful instruction of all. It's like riding a bike.
yeah, yeah,
You just get the hang of it after a while.
yeah,
You just get the hang of it after a while.
yeah, yeah,
You gotta stay with it. It's a practice.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But like, nobody just gets on a bike and rides away. There's always that person that helps you to get started with it. And maybe there are people that probably there are, the people that fall over a lot and get themselves up. So thank you all for being here. Again, tomorrow I'm going to be going through the Anapanasati Sutta at the Berkeley Buddhist Monastery from 10 to 5. It will be on Zoom, assuming that all the technology works. I'm taking my computer, and I don't know that it'll be it might be just like, the side of my head or something, but the audio, hopefully I'll take my microphone, so the audio will be good. And yeah, and it's fun to go through the whole sutta, which has 4 sections that correspond to the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And there's a link if you didn't get the link in the chat, there's a link on the front page of my website for the event page on my website, and then the Zoom link is on that page. So it'd be nice to have people online. Obviously, I'm hoping people come in person, because it will be really embarrassing to just be sitting at the monastery alone. I guess won't be embarrassed, just will be like kind of sad. Anyway, that's not going to happen. Many people have said they're coming. So let me just close with what's been become my loving kindness practice lately. And this is just to repeat the lines from the Metta Sutta. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies, downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, free from hatred and ill will. We begin radiating through our entire body, which in some sense is our entire world, radiating kindness over our entire body, upwards to the head and downwards to the toes, outwards to the tips of the hands, the fingers, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, free from hatred and ill will, and radiating out of our body, out into the building we're in, to our neighborhood, to our city, upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, free from hatred and ill will. loving kindness radiating into space, to infinite space, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, free from hatred and ill will. All right, thank you.